People are still trickling in, walking from the other side of campus, but I thought that we should start. I'd like to welcome you all today. Thank you for coming. I'm Magda Mustafa. I'm a faculty member in the architecture department. I'm also the associate chair of that department, and I've had the privilege to be invited to be the moderator of today's conversation, which is our first campus conversation in our second century here at AUC. So it's a very, hopefully, memorable moment that we'll have. I'm also been privileged to be part of this process today and hopefully moving into the future, as all of us will be. So it gives me great pleasure to first welcome our president to the stage for his welcoming remarks.
Thank you, Magda. Fellow panelists, thank you. Trustees for visiting with us. Thank you to members of the community. We're here at AUC at a very exciting moment, really part of truly an inflection point in our history, and it's an extended one. 20 years ago or so, we established a century committee looking ahead even then to our second century, to our move. The move to our campus really was a turning point in our history, and now we've had over a decade on this campus. At that moment, as we're concluding the celebration of all our accomplishments of the first century, we're looking forward to our second one. And what we're about today is not to reveal to you the plan. It is instead to begin a process, a conversation, where together we plan and develop. We have a vision, we know who we are, what we do, and a good idea of where we're going, but we want to really sharpen that together. Students, faculty, staff, alumni, stakeholders from the community around us who have, in many cases, developed this area because AUC is here. This is a very open conversation, and it's on a really fast track, and we've got professional help. The process is ours, but it is my privilege now to introduce the professional help we've engaged so that it isn't just talk, so that with a lot of talk together, a lot of thinking together, we precipitate actionable plans together. So after quite a rigorous and deliberate selection process, we have selected Beyer, Blinder, Bell for their extensive experience planning campus expansions with universities in the United States and around the world. We're very proud to have them as a member of our team as we continue together to develop the AUC legacy into the next century. We're using BBB as the short form for the firm that we've engaged. BBB will help us determine how best to utilize our entire campus. This isn't about building in the spaces where we know there's lots of space out there. It's also making sure that we're using to the optimal level what we've got, and then looking at everything that we've got available to do even better for what we want for our priorities. We will be prioritizing future building projects to shape and advance our educational mission and the experience of AUC for all of us, again, students, faculty, and staff, as we live and work together on this campus. BBB will be coordinating with others that we've been working with along the way. This isn't something we just woke up and thought, oh, we need to start thinking about planning. We've been planning and looking at our spaces, certainly for the whole time that I've been here, and I'm sure before. BBB will be coordinating with a group called Sites International, and also space planners that many in this room have already met at the Hassel studio, as we're developing even longer-term plans to meet our campus needs into the future. So let me not delay, and please join me in welcoming the members of the Beyer, Blinder, Bell team. Hani Hassan, who is Egyptian-American. He's a partner and director based in the Washington, D.C. office. We have Neil Kitteridge, who is also a partner and the director of planning and urban design, partner in charge at BBB. We have Scott Archer, who is the senior associate project director at BBB, and Anna Orsler is the associate project manager and planner, and she's located in nearby Kampala, so at least in our time zone. They are joined on the panel by representatives from the AUC senior leadership and the Board of Trustees. I would also ask you to join in welcoming our Chairman of the Board, Richard Bartlett. We also have Ihab Abdurrahman, the Provost, with me on the panel. Magda Mustafa has just introduced herself. She's been a leading light in all of our thinking about this campus and how we use it since before I arrived. She was one of the first people I connected with to learn about the neighborhood initiative and how we engage with our neighbors all around us. So let me now turn the microphone over to Chairman Bartlett to kick off our discussion. Richard?
Thank you, Frank, and thanks to all of you for joining us today. I appreciate the opportunity to get together with such a large part of the AUC community. I can't tell exactly what kind of members of the community are out there, but I hope it's a broad swath. As you probably know, the trustees are here this week for the next few days for our annual meeting in Cairo, and this is a particularly exciting visit because of the obvious celebrations of our centennial. And I'd like to thank all of those of you who've been a part of that. It's taken a huge amount of work. It's been a lot of fun, and we appreciate all you've done. But for today's exercise, I'd like for us to think of the university as only 10 years old. We knew when we built the new campus that the area around us would be a wasteland when we first moved, and it was. We hoped that New Cairo would fill in around us, and it has. And now with the administrative capital going up about 15 kilometers beyond us, AUC will increasingly be part of a new corridor of Egyptian life. As I've remarked on occasion to my fellow trustees, we didn't leave Tahrir Square, we moved it. It came out here with us. And so we've now lived in the campus for 10 years, and it's time for us to take stock of how we use it. I like to think of it as studying the anthropology of our community. When we built the campus, we didn't know how students would respond to living on campus. We didn't know where the developments in the sciences would take us. We didn't know that we would create 2 new schools. We didn't know how much studio space would be necessary for academic studies in the arts and the architecture. We didn't know of the energy for collaboration and innovation that would develop from within our own community. None of this is to be critical of the campus design. University campuses should always be works in process, because so is learning. I hope I never see the day when AUC's campus is finished. That would almost certainly be a sign of our intellectual stagnation. So let me make a few observations about this process. First, this is a master planning process. It's not a building plan. Our goal is to imagine future needs of the university, not so that we can build them all now, but so that we can identify how and where the campus should expand as our needs develop. We want the organic growth in our activities to follow a deliberate plan rather than allow the campus to be shaped by ad hoc and reactive planning. We have a spectacular campus. It didn't get there by accident. Second, this is the very beginning of the process, not the end. I've heard worries from some of you that you're expected today to be providing all your feedback. Hardly. Absolutely not. This process will be an iterative one that will be inclusive and provide many opportunities to offer ideas, then to provide further feedback as the ideas get narrowed down and prioritized into strategies. Third, I want to assure you all that the results of this process are not at all preordained. The purpose of the campus is to serve its community, and that is first and foremost all of you. The board has ideas about aspects that we think might be improved, but we suspect that you have others, and yours will be grounded in the daily life of AUC, which, after all, is the purpose of this process. We need to hear the mundane, the esoteric, the funny, and the intellectually exciting. Finally, this kind of planning exercise is creative, aspirational, and a whole lot of fun. So I'd like to turn it back to Magda to let the games begin. Thank you.
So before we move on, Mr. Chairman, could you maybe reflect for just a minute why you think this BBB team are the people that are best positioned to take us forward to this next step?
Sure. I'm on, right? First of all, we should all be highly complimented because our selection process provided us with unbelievable opportunities. It was a relatively quick process, but candidly, what we did was to pick 3 of the preeminent firms, certainly in the United States, perhaps the world, and ask them to make proposals. And their interest was off the charts, so we had our pick of absolutely anybody that we wanted. Candidly, I think BBB impressed us for a couple of reasons. First, we liked the idea of a new look at the campus. The obvious option that we had was to hire the people who had done the last plan, and they were available, eager. BBB impressed us because of their, other trustees have said humility, and that's probably a good word, but clearly a desire to hear from the community, hear from us, not give us anything that was off the shelf. And then finally, their breadth of experience is unbelievable. I mean, they've designed things around the world for the State Department. They've done master plans for Princeton, for Dartmouth, for the Harvard Business School. It's just quite a list. They have a real specialty in campus planning. And finally, we have a Egyptian lead architect who was so desperate to do something for his homeland that it excited us.
Just before we get to our BBB team, I wanted to loop back to the president because you talk so much about what makes AUC unique in your mind, and framed by that uniqueness, why do you think getting this process right is so important, and how can we ensure that we get it right?
Well, all of us who are part of AUC know that it's a special institution, and when you live at it, sometimes what makes it special you can take for granted or can wear off. My whole life has been enriched by cross-cultural international experiences, from the Fulbright program I had early on through my later diplomatic career. What excites me is anything that fights entropy by bringing people together across barriers of time and place, geography, religion, culture, history. AUC is such a special place because in a time of otherization, a time of building of walls, a time of fear of the other, demonization even, this is a place that celebrates bringing people together to make magic. The magic of higher education, which is the production and the transmission of knowledge. No higher human pursuit. There are some 3,600 or 4,000 American universities in the United States. We're the only American university that's in Egypt. We're authentically American, and we're authentically Egyptian. And we now have Egyptian Naqa'i certification, accreditation to prove it, as well as the American accreditation. The role of this university has been, at first, in our maybe first 50 years especially, to open the world of science and knowledge, world standards of it, to a place that was already an Eastern center of knowledge and wisdom, and make it available to Egyptians at a time when the world didn't have so many portals. as time went on, there are many more portals for Egyptians to discover the world. In our second half century, it was a place that brought Americans and other foreigners to learn Arabic, Islamic art and architecture, the problems of rapid urbanization, conflict resolution, fighting poverty, global spread of disease, environmental issues, the social sciences, the biomedical sciences. It became a place that attracted foreigners to this heart, this welcoming, vibrant heart of the Arab and Islamic world. Right now, more than ever, I think this university's mission is more important to the world than ever before. And it's important not only to keep the attraction of Egyptians here as the city expands and moves out to the new administrative capital, we also have to remind the foreigners that Egypt is a welcoming, stimulating, dynamic place to visit. Yes, Tahrir is fine and beautiful and historic and charming, but we need a campus here whose first attraction will always be its people. That's going to be the first attraction of Egypt to foreigners like me, no matter what. That's a given. But to bring them to AUC, we have to have a campus that is throbbing, not just beautiful, but throbbing with intellectual stimulation. So it's important we not just stop where we were with having a lovely campus and look inward. It's time to plan to look outward and develop in a way that will keep attracting people here.
So moving from these very visionary words, let's move to the nuts and bolts of this conversation with our BBB team. So my first question is to Neil. What's your personal definition? We saying the chairman outlined that this is a master planning process. So to you, what is your personal definition of master planning, and how do you see it applied to AUC?
Well, thank you, Magda, for the question. And before I begin responding, I think I just want to say, and on behalf of our entire team, I think we're very humbled by the president and the chairman's introductions. We are all deeply, deeply honored to be here, and we're just so thankful and appreciative to all of our fellow panel members, and especially to the entire audience, everyone who came out today, for the incredibly warm welcome that we've had over the past few days. We've been on campus for a few days now, meeting with lots of people, learning all kinds of incredible information, and just experiencing the campus. And we want to extend our thanks and our gratitude for that. We are just incredibly excited and thrilled to be working with the AUC community, the whole AUC community, as your partners over the course of this coming year on this master planning effort. So thank you all, and thank you all for coming today. For me, I mean, master planning of a campus is a very, very exciting prospect. I could not agree more with the chairman's remarks that a campus is always a work in progress. It is never complete, it is never finished. Knowledge is always evolving. Academic needs, fields of knowledge are always emerging and changing, and campuses change to reflect that. And in all of our experiences with campuses around the world, that's the most important thing to remember, is there's not an end point, but it's an evolution, and you're coming into that, into the flow of that river, and participating for a while in the direction and the flow of the river, and then it continues after you finish, and others then take the mantle and continue the evolution of a campus, and that's very important to us. So it's a very exciting job. If anybody here is thinking about your career choices and you're thinking about architecture, campus planning, urban planning, I can tell you it's a great job. Please consider it. Come talk to me. But I think, just personally for me, the most important thing about any master plan, and it's been said, just reiterating some of the things that have been said, is that we are new here. We are not the experts. You're the experts. You know, we have a lot to learn, and we're learning a lot already, and it's been very exciting. But over the course of this year, we feel like the best master plan reflects the participation of the whole community. Our belief is that the greater the participation, the better the resulting plan, and we believe very strongly in that, and we want to really implement that here. So in a way, my definition is the plan is a process. It's a process where the community comes together to create a vision for the future of the campus really together as a community, and that's exciting for us. We're really looking forward, and you're going to hear in a few minutes about the ways in which you can get engaged over the next year, and we want you to tell your friends and get as many people involved as you possibly can, because that is going to make the plan the best possible plan. A few other just thoughts about master planning. One is that, of course, there'll be a lot about numbers and size. You have to think about the size of the offices and the space needs and all of that, all of those technical things. But there's a kind of an intangible thing, which is the sense of place that the campus has, and that's very important to us for master planning. We want to learn from you, from all of you, and we'll be asking you this a lot. What is special to you about the campus? What gives it that beauty, that sense of place, that feeling? It's not just a place you go, it's a home. It's your second home, or for some of you, it's your first home. The president lives on campus. Some of you also live on campus, and it's where you spend your life. And so extending that sense of place, that special feeling of the atmosphere of the campus, the green spaces, the buildings, onward in that ongoing evolution, and then also in making improvements where they're needed. That's really critical to the process. And then another point is that master planning does have to build on, and this is following on your remarks as well, it has to build on the strategic needs and priorities of the university. So the master plan is the implementation of the university's academic needs and program needs and strategic goals. And so we'll be working very closely with the whole community to make sure that we're always making that sort of the top driver of sort of the reason for like how the master plan develops. And as part of that, it also has to reflect financial priorities. So the goal here isn't to go create like a grand plan that is going to be hugely expensive to build. We kind of like to describe this as the master plan is sort of a roadmap. It's something that allows, as funding is available over time, and there are a lot of different financial priorities, of course, for every university, that it allows for those changes to be made over time. And it needs to do that in a somewhat flexible way. So it's kind of a roadmap that gives us options, because in 5 years, the needs might be different than what we think they are today. There could be new academic programs. There are all kinds of things that could happen. So the flexibility is very important. It's not a fixed plan. And as part of our thinking about the strategic needs and the academic needs, I just wanted to mention, and the president mentioned this earlier, we'll be coordinating very closely with the Learning Spaces study that is ongoing and that many of you have participated in, because that's also really thinking about how academic spaces within the campus and within the buildings are serving that mission. And so we want the master plan to do the same thing. And we've already met with that team, started to kind of integrate the knowledge of the two efforts. And just the last sort of a special thing that we've learned from talking to everyone so far, just in the last few days, that we think could be very important and exciting is how can we increase the connections between the AUC campus, the site itself, and the surrounding New Cairo community around us. And of course, we have to bear in mind the security requirements and all of the things about the perimeter of the campus that are important. But at the same time, can we creatively think of ways to make the campus more welcoming to the New Cairo community and to create the opportunity for the external community to interact with the AUC community? And that could mean being more welcome on campus to experience some of our open spaces or to participate in things like innovation, arts and culture. There are all kinds of opportunities there that we see, and we're very excited about that aspect of this process.
Thank you, Neil. I'd like to turn now to Hani. Throughout our conversations over the past few months now, your team, it's become apparent, has worked on so many campuses in the United States and so many places around the world. How do you plan to adopt that thinking to the specificity that the president talked about at AUC? And also, why is AUC in particular very meaningful to you?
Thank you, Magda. Before I answer this question, I just want to say that I'm just absolutely humbled by the introductory remarks. And for the past few days, the welcoming feeling that we all received by everybody that we have met in Egypt has been just overwhelming. I just feel at home. But to answer your question specifically, every project is unique. Every project has its own requirements. Every project had its own program, its own context. It's very different. So we approach every project with the greatest sense of humility. And we do extensive due diligence and extensive research to understand the program, the needs, and the context to be able to come up with the best solution. And that is why all our projects appear to be different, because they apply only and they're always grounded to the particular context and the particular environment they exist. What is very interesting to us here is that you have 100 years of history, 10 years of very specific experience with this campus. So we want to learn from all that, what worked, what didn't work, what could be improved. So we want to learn from you about all that in order to make the expansion in the future of the campus much better and much enhanced. But what we do bring is a fresh eye looking at all this. And because of the extensive experience that we have practically throughout the world, there are certain elements in the successful plans that we have done elsewhere that maybe could benefit the AUC plan here. So we don't have exactly a set formula that will apply to every project. Every project is unique, as I said. But at a personal level, I was born here. I grew up in Egypt. I went to Cairo University. I taught at Cairo University for 4 years before I moved to the United States. And it's been a dream of mine to be able to do a project in Egypt. I've worked all over the world, but I have not done a project in Egypt. So what more appropriate project to do than American University in Cairo? So I'm just going to close here by saying, thank you all. It's been a wonderful opportunity to be engaged in this process. And thank you for all your welcoming feelings and support throughout this process. And I look forward to continue that project with you into the next 100 years, the next 1,000 years, maybe. Thank you, Maggie.
Thank you, Hani. And the feeling is absolutely mutual. I mean, it's the chemistry, I think, that we've found, it just ensures that we've made the right decision in this selection. So now we're going to get to the fun part where we can actually engage in this conversation that we've been promising. So I'm going to turn to Anna. Over the past few days that we've spent on campus, I think all of us can agree we've kind of collectively made this observation that one of AUC's strongest assets are our campus, but also our community. So how can we engage the former to inform the latter? So how can the people in this room and the people in our larger community get involved in this planning process?
Thank you, Professor Mustafa. So engagement, in our opinion, we share the view that actually it's the most exciting and one of the most fun parts of the planning process. And it never looks the same. So the ways that we engage a campus and a community, they vary with technology, they vary across cultures, and they vary according to institutions. One thing I want to say, we were introduced as the professional help in the campus planning, and our first piece of advice is maybe that we see this as a partnership, and we see this as it's not BBB, but it's the team. It's BBB working together hand in hand with AUC, and even over the last few days, we've learned a tremendous amount and met a lot of people and heard a lot of things, and we never would have been able to achieve that on our own. So as you see us on campus over the next year, this semester and next semester, please know that we're working in concert very closely with a lot of your distinguished faculty and your hardworking administration. And the planning team is not just BBB, but it's all of us. So one of the most exciting ways that we can get feedback from you is what we call an open house. And that's a time where we will be here in a room like this, or maybe in a plaza outside on campus, and we'll be sharing some of the preliminary ideas and thoughts and scenarios and concepts that we've been hearing from the community. And you can see there's some photos on the screen where we're getting feedback with you about drawings and about plans and about concepts. So this speaks to the iterative process of, listening, sharing, listening again, and sharing again. And in our experience, at the end of this iterative process is often a really rich, beautiful, and exciting roadmap forward. We will also be doing outreach in other ways. So even when we're not on campus, there will be ways that we're getting your feedback. You're all very familiar with surveys, and we've been asking ourselves as a team, are there other creative ways that we can collect data about how you use your campus and about the ideas that you have for the future of your campus? And so we've talked about, a lot of exciting opportunities like a pop-up storefront, or using the university directorate screens that you have to find a building. Maybe we can use those for something else, to collect data about your favorite places to, I don't know, take a nap or study or meet with faculty. And we'll be having focus group meetings, and these are more of a conversation around a table where we listen and ask specific questions about academic or student life needs. So those will be happening over the course of, between now and the end of 2020. And then if you look up on the screen, you can see, our master plan steps. So we're starting now, today and this week, listening and learning about your campus. And then we will be doing a series of exercises, often in a charrette format, where we're thinking about the ideas we heard and thinking about what types of scenarios might come about from those ideas. And then we are in conversation with the AUC community about prioritizing what we've heard. And then at the end, it'll result in a campus master plan, which will guide the university going forward. Throughout this entire process, we're going to be reaching out to you using the ways I just described, and maybe more ways that we haven't mentioned. And now for the fun part, I think, is that we wanted to use this afternoon to launch this engagement with the community. So we've come up with a series of questions we're going to ask you, and I want to let you know your answer is not binding. What you say to us today, it's anonymous. No one's going to trace it back to you, and it's just the first step to kind of hear some of your ideas and understand the landscape. There will be many more of these types of engagements. So with that, I'll hand it over to Scott, who will walk you through how to activate the live polling.
Yes, so if you have a device of any kind, please pull it out if you're willing, and go to menti.com, menti.com, and enter the code 73167. That code will remain on the top of the screen, so if you ever get knocked off or are having trouble logging in, it will be there for you. And if you have issues, I think there's some student ambassadors around that can help out as well. First of all, we want to know who you are, who's represented in this room. And so if you don't mind answering the first question to tell us about yourself, hopefully as people are answering, the results will start popping on screen. Please let us know if you're having issues. As we get through the process, we'll start having a lot more rapid fire questions, but to get this first one going. The code is 73167. It's slow.
If you refresh your browser, if you have this screen with the image, refresh your browser, and you should see this question on your screen. And we're testing the IT capacity of the room, by the way.
Should I refresh?
I'll tell you your choices in advance, so when the question appears, you can answer quickly. You might be a student, an undergraduate or graduate student, a faculty member, a staff member. There's an other category if you're none of the above, or you may be a trustee or a visitor to campus this week. Another way we wanted to engage with you today, for those that maybe don't have a smartphone or if the technology failed, was for you to be able to stand up and share your thoughts with us on some of the questions we're going to ask. So there are people walking around the room with microphones.
It just worked for one of us. Just worked here.
All right, so now it should be working now. But if you don't want to answer on your phone, you can raise your hand and someone with a microphone will come give you the microphone and you can share your answer with us. All right, so you can see the room.
Also, make sure once you selected your item, click submit at the bottom of the page, and it'll make sure it'll get through. So hopefully we're going now.
A lot of staff, a lot of faculty.
It's nice to see there's a lot of staff representation, faculty.
We're giving 60 seconds for each question, but no pressure.
This is the easy one.
No. The next question is a little harder, but a lot of fun. When you think of the AUC campus or the design of the AUC campus, what are two descriptive words that come to mind first?
And it'll take a few minutes to load based on our experience. If anyone wants to share with the room instead of use their phone, you're welcome to share now. You can raise your hand and a microphone will be brought to you.
I'm actually very intrigued to see the word beautiful in the middle of the screen because that was my impression when I first came on campus. Authentic, spacious.
Spacious and green. And home is coming up.
Sustainable.
Very interesting. Yeah.
All right, 10 more seconds. If you haven't put in your answer yet, now's the time.
We won't hold you to it. You could, in the future, you could always have more complimentary words on the beautiful campus you have.
I see cold. There's cold there.
That's only because it's winter. Wait until.
We also have experienced that. I think it's very interesting that the word authentic is coming up
Yeah.
very, very powerfully in here, which means the campus has a sense of history, even though it's really just over a decade old.
I like the word community also.
There,
Switch. Okay.
So actually, this is one of my favorite questions. So I'm a planner and an architect, but my heart is in planning, I would say. And your campus is really unique in that it's a very walkable campus. And within the campus, it's very serene and it's a real community feeling. And we keep asking ourselves, what's the next layer outside of the campus? And what's the relationship between where people live and where they spend their time when they're not on campus and coming here? So we want to know how you arrive here on a typical day. And you could use today as your example. So this morning, how did you arrive to campus? And we heard that there's parking for about, 30% of the people who actually use the campus. So I guess going forward, we would start to dig into some of these questions with different stakeholder groups, right? If you drive by yourself, where are you coming from, where you're parking, to understand the flows of traffic around the campus from a demand and supply perspective. Maybe someone who put bus or shuttle, would one of those people be able to stand up and tell us where they take the bus to and from and what their experience is? I don't know if anyone wants to.
From Maadi, and the service is excellent.
Okay, great. Anyone who says, walk, I live nearby, can you tell us what your experience is? If you said, walk, I live nearby, not on campus. There's one over here. And anyone else who has an interesting story or experience with getting to campus, we'd love to hear from you. Is there a sidewalk or you walk on the road? Okay. One more?
So there's this WhatsApp group where most of the people who live in Nasser City have joined, and we usually offer rides on it, and I was wondering if there's some sort of way that we can kind of like engage that, because AUC does encourage carpooling in general, as you don't actually there's a fee when coming into campus if you're going to parking site, if you're carpooling with someone, or someone is carpooling with you.
Great, thank you. Actually, so in Kampala, I teach at Makerere University in the architecture department, and there's a students developed an app where you could do just that for ride sharing. So if a student is leaving from a certain place and going to, and the app matches student to student, and then you just pay direct to the person who's driving you to help with the fuel. So I think there's a lot of great things happening around that. Any other?
Yeah. I live near campus, and I walk here every day. The sidewalk is really bad, and sometimes I see more dogs than human beings.
Okay, next question. So we know that everyone in this room has a lot of opinions, and you also have a lot of ideas about how to make things better. These are just a few things that we've seen and heard in the last 3 days, so the goal is to rank them. Which of these do you think is the most important priority and the least important priority?
Or top two.
And again, this is just a litmus test. This is not official, and no one will know what you vote for. Would someone who chose other mind telling us what idea they have in mind?
This one here?
On the right, in the middle? And if another hand can go up somewhere else too, and we'll get to you. Oh, sorry.
So when I was thinking other, I was thinking more places to rest and relax. So there are places to relax, but open places, I think. So, places to bring in the neighborhood community.
All right, one more in the back.
Issues is our isolation. We need more spaces that are pervious and that bring in others, including from our sister universities in Harvard.
Thank you.
In the middle?
I have something. We need like an architecture students. We need like suppliers, stationery, or some facilities.
Great. So the next question is, what do you see as the top 2 challenges for the campus? And this we're trying to think more physically to achieve your daily life, your academic studies, to hang out with friends, to meet with faculty, to meet with your coworkers. What are the top 2 challenges in this list or other? So there's a lot of enhancing campus life. Would anybody want to share ideas of what they think might help enhance it?
In the front here?
Thank you again for this. I think one of the important things is there is quite a separation between the activities on campus. So if you want to do something, you need to go to a separate space. So I think this will enhance how kind of things are integrated into the campus activity to bring more liveliness for all constituents.
That's great. We've heard a lot about creating focal places on campus where people can get together, so that's great.
Can I ask someone who chose climate change, can you talk about what you're thinking about the future? The middle, yeah. We're going to the expert here.
Decrease AC on campus, especially in winter time.
Ties to the cold comment.
Very practically about climate change is the issue of last May, the temperature reached 48 degrees in Egypt, which is about 20 degrees above normal. And I think that if you're looking for the longer term, all of us, everyone in terms of business or urban planning, but particularly in this case, the university, I think cutting the radiant and ambient temperature is important, I think, for the future. It's vital almost in everything that we're doing. But the green space here is also as vital, I think. Thank you.
That's great.
Oh, I wanted to state a point about the previous point about the human. We don't have we're not using our spaces properly. So in the summer, we don't have anywhere to go, because basically all the areas are affected by the sun or some sort of that. So we don't have anywhere to go. So we just go to the library to stay, and we're not welcome to stay and have fun, where it's more place to study. So I guess we need more shaded places or more plazas or shaded area for different times of the year, of course.
Yes, thank you so much. That's great. The next question is, what is your favorite place on campus? It could be for any reason. What is your favorite place? Seeing a lot of gardens and libraries.
It looks like all we have to do is actually plant a bunch of trees and we're done.
I think the top three are the gardens, the library, and my office. Yeah. Yeah. It is very exciting to hear about how the green spaces are one of the most meaningful spaces to people.
And we have one more. I know a lot of you have class right after this, so we'll try to keep moving. But what place could use the most improvement on campus? Particularly from a physical point of view, how buildings, open space, courtyards, any type of those spaces, but specifically what space, either by name or by type, that could use the most improvement?
We know you have opinions about this.
The smoking area?
Bathrooms, okay. And you can be specific if you'd like.
Architecture department is rising to the top.
I think we have good representation here today.
Yes, it was an assignment for my students to attend. Right? You're all there?
It's interesting to see the gates and the edges of campus on the list. Smoking area is a popular one. We're not sure who the improvement is meant for with the smoking area. The smokers or the non-smokers.
Yes.
It looks like the architecture department has a strategy here.
Yeah, I think this is pre-planned.
It's just a conversation starter, right? Yes. No one's going to hold us to this. But I'm happy with the 347, 350. I mean, with a campus of 5,000 students, 400 plus faculty, Dr. Ali, is that a good sample size? Thank you. Hearing that from you makes us relieved that the data that we get out of this, I think, are at least a good starting point to frame our conversation moving forward.
It's a starting point, and I think over the course of this was a little bit of just whetting the appetite kind of activity and try it out with this group. But we'll be doing many more of these types of things and starting to aggregate and really build up a complete picture. The more, like I said in the beginning, the more people participate, the better information we have to base our work on.
So we are aware that it is 2 o'clock. Some people need to go off to classes, but we'd like to just use these results and the questions that have been asked and the responses that you've heard. If there's anything people would like to share just openly about their thoughts, things they'd like to share that these questions inspired, observations that they had that maybe surprised them as the data went up on the screen, that you were expecting to see something that you didn't, or saw something that you were surprised by. Does anyone want to share any thoughts? Can we have a front for our associate provost here, Zainab Amin? Can we have a mic? Is there no mics? Okay, let's start with a question back there and then get a mic. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm Thomas, Graduate School of Education, and so this is not my idea. This has been percolating around for some time here at AUC before I got here. But one of the things that goes along with the idea of reaching out to the neighborhood is that we have such tremendous students and such tremendous faculty and resources here that I think one direction that we might want to look at is to revitalize the idea of reaching out to the talent and the promise here in Egypt, but the undeveloped talent, the undeveloped promise, because there are so many kids, 12, 13, 15 years old, that could really benefit from the home that is AUC.
Can I just ask the provost, you haven't had a chance to give, we've talked about this idea of trying to use our campus to capture these young student assets. I agree with you, the energy that's out there. Your thoughts on that, just academically speaking?
And actually, we just discussed that also with the Dean of Graduate School, or the Dean of the School of Continuing Education, on how to better use the School of Continuing Education to reach to millions of Egypt, not only to our students who come to our academic programs. So definitely, we would like to expand more on that. And definitely, we started last year by offering the summer at AUC, where we are inviting people from outside the campus to come and enjoy the beautiful campus with us. Not only the beauty of the campus, but also the academics that we can offer to the community around us. So I think we are on the same page, Thomas. Thank you.
Do you have a mic? Yeah.
I just want to share something or a challenge that I don't know how it can be resolved, but I'll give you an example of myself. I used to live in Zamalek before I moved to New Cairo 5 years ago. For 8 years, I used to work at AUC and live in Zamalek, and I used to attend most of the activities that took place in downtown. They were very interesting, whether they were art galleries, orchestra performances. I used to enjoy these very much. I used to walk back home. This was a very nice kind of entertainment. When we moved to new campus, I spent like 8 years before I personally moved to New Cairo. I never attended any events in the evening at AUC because of the problem of the commute and going back late at night after the event finishes. I think this will continue to be a problem no matter how enriching, stimulating experiences you offer. It will continue to be a problem for people who have a long commute after the event. So I'm not sure how you can resolve this, but I think you need to think carefully how to engage people despite the fact that they have to go through this very long commute.
We've talked about this a little bit. Maybe you want to respond.
Yes, very much. I thank you for the question or the comment. I think one of the things that we would love to see happen is to have the campus be more lively in the evenings and in the off hours, the non-academic hours on the weekends, and to have it be easier for people to experience and enjoy the campus, throughout the day, the sort of 24/7 day and week. So kind of to your point and to that question, what would make the neighborhood around us more desirable, more attractive, to help attract faculty, for the retention of faculty, to make it a better environment, for the campus itself, but also beyond the campus. I would really be interested in hearing your thoughts on sort of the factors that would make this an appealing neighborhood, both to live, but also just as a destination for shopping and entertainment and the activities, the things you want to do. Everybody loves being on campus, but there are times when also you want to get off campus and sort of do something else. And like, what would make it attractive to you? If I could put that question out to the audience.
And I think also we have at AUC been in conversation with a lot of our institutional neighbors, particularly the developers that are creating the spaces that faculty will, if they choose to move here. And we have the kind of relationship that they can be part of, we can be part of their conversation and they can be part of ours. So it's not only about what is the quality of those spaces and what should they be, but also the mechanisms through working with the developers to perhaps create ways that AUC faculty would be prioritized in their offering of housing stock.
We may be able to influence the character of the neighborhood to make it a better place for the AUC community to be neighbors to.
Their perfect market. I mean, they would want to sell to us first, so we can make a win-win, I think, out of that conversation. Who else is in the room that would like to?
I have 2 points I'd like to make. Can you see me?
Diana, go ahead.
Yeah, I have 2 points, actually. The first one is, I think that starting with the definition of community, I think that if we were to poll everybody in this room in the campus, I think who defines who's in the community would probably not be the same. So when we talk about bringing the community in, et cetera, who exactly are we talking about? And my second point is that I think it would be really great to incorporate some genuine green technologies, whether it's solar energy, beyond just little mini projects that are showcased, but genuine living walls, hydroponics, growing things that are eaten, getting rid of the massive amounts of garbage or waste that is generated by the restaurants and the fast food outlets, maybe thinking of some creative ways and structural ways that those things can actually you know, kind of move in that direction.
I think this is really a great opportunity to make AUC an exemplary campus, particularly with this aspect. And you have all the ingredients to make this happen. And there are other examples of in other projects that maybe, Anna, you want to speak about that?
Yeah, well, I think, first of all, we've worked on a lot of university campuses in many countries, and we're very impressed at what's already happening here at AUC on the sustainability front and consideration of the environment. Your school has been acknowledged by institutions for the work that you've done, and we actually really think that you could, there's an opportunity to leverage from like good to better or better to best here in being a role model for the region, and I would even say across the world. So we're excited to kind of think of sustainability as like a guiding thread throughout our work, and to even elevate a little bit further the great work that's being done.
Bassam? Yeah.
Thank you again. My name is Bassam Kamel. I'm from the Architecture Department, and I'm the chair of the Senate Curriculum Committee. The participatory processes lead an outcome based on how they are structured. How do you think you can structure this process so that it intrigues a different learning experience at AUC and the prospect for new programs, new interdisciplinary interaction between departments, rather than the typical mindset of where we are now, and it may open kind of ideas to how we look into the future?
Yeah, that's really a great question. In the past few days, with interaction with several people, we talked about the synergy that could be created between multiple disciplines, which we think it's a good idea. There's a lot of examples in other institutions where it was very successful to carry that throughout the campus with different disciplines. So I think it's a very interesting idea and something that we certainly should be exploring.
And perhaps just to add to that briefly, as you know, as campus planning has moved forward throughout the world at universities throughout the world, the value of flexible spaces that allow for more experimentation, for more interdisciplinary collaboration has become one of the top priorities for universities, really, as you all know. And so I think we're really building and also working with the learning spaces study that's ongoing here. I think we're very interested in this idea of flexible space and in finding more and more ways for people to break out of silos and work together throughout the campus, either in existing spaces or new spaces.
And I'm glad, Neil, you brought up the learning spaces. We have the chair of our learning spaces task force, Aziza Louzi's here, but we are being very careful to make sure that there are touch points between these two processes as they move forward, to make sure that we were state of the art, but state of the art of 25 years ago. So we need to, when it was first conceived and planned and when we first kicked off this whole process. So we need to realign that. But do you want to share something about the procedural issues of how we move forward before we take another question?
This is in response to Dr. Bassel's question, if I understood it correctly, which is, what is the process now for engaging, having just kicked off with some very broad questions, how do we continue, correct? And I don't know whether Provost Dr. Ahab, you've completed your consultations that we discussed yesterday with the chair of the architecture department about the steering committee. Okay. There's a wonderful slide that BBB put up for us early in the discussion, because one of the reasons we chose them is, like us, they wanted to begin with a deeply, meaningfully consultative process. And how do you structure that for a community of 6,500 students, 500 faculty, 2,000 staff, 38,000 alumni worldwide, and then neighbors, you know, at least 1.5 million in our immediate neighborhood, of a 3.5 million projected population in New Cairo. And we were impressed by the structure of sort of 4 clusters that you had, with a small executive group and a steering committee, which is the main way of engaging, I guess, with the larger community and the immediate community, and then a working group that sort of informs it. So the steering committee is something, we've just sent out a number of invitations, and did the projected chair, did the projected chair agree? Okay, in that case, Dr. Basil, you've accepted, correct? We had, we've asked Basil Camel, given his expertise and the fact that he is widely influential, and this really is his wheelhouse, to pull us together in a steering committee to bring in all the ideas, the thinking, the needs, the requirements, the passion that will inform and shape the decision-making on how we will actually prioritize. What comes first? What do we have to raise funds against first? What are our priorities? The executive committee will be responsible for shaping those, putting them to the board if they're big muscle movements to make sure we allocate the resources to it. Then we'll have a working group of administrators to support all of that, get the data behind it, get the numbers behind it. So thank you, Basil, for agreeing to chair the steering committee. And thanks to our chairman who pushed us really hard. We wanted to have the first meeting of the steering committee while a good number of the trustees are still with us on campus for their annual visit. So the first time we could get was going to be tomorrow evening. The Prime Minister, I learned walking in, has changed the time of our meeting. So I don't know what the time is as of this moment for the steering committee to convene its inaugural meeting with trustees. I honestly don't know because that changed as I was walking in. It was to have been a working dinner tomorrow night, and Jen and Rania, I don't know where that bubble is. Is it still 6? I'll repeat it if you don't have the microphone. 6:45 tomorrow evening, is it downtown? Oriental Hall, 6:45. Steering committee. We'll be getting the word out to the steering committee members who have said yes, correct? It's 20 or 20-something members with all trustees, or which trustees? All trustees who wish to come, correct? Working dinner, 6:45, Oriental Hall, founding meeting of the steering committee with our BBB friends who will still be here too. So we'll really get down and dirty in the process then.
And I've been observing how the steering committee had come together, and as a faculty member myself, I can assure all of you that it was a very iterative process that ensured broad representation, that we had voices that we knew would be capable of capturing their own constituencies' feedback. So we're hoping that it's structured in a way that's going to be really an effective voice for what AUC community wants to get out of this process. Neil?
And the other dimension then to the engagement process is the community-wide outreach that we're going to be doing really over the course of this year. And so as Anna mentioned, and as you can see on the screen, there's a website, it's live, and you can see, first of all, you can see the beautiful sketch that Hanny created. Sorry, Hanny. And you can see some very basic information, so there's not a lot there yet, but that is going to be the campus master plan website. And as information is, people give their thoughts and their ideas, that information is going to appear. There will be updates, there will be announcements about events related to the master plan, and we're going to be having some community-wide events. So Anna mentioned what we're really looking forward to is that we're going to have a big open house where people can come over the course of a couple of hours or a few hours or 2 days. People can come and sort of see lots of displays and information about the planning process and speak to the experts, speak to the team. And when I say the team, I mean our combined team all collectively working on this. And we'll have lots of other activities for the AUC community to participate in throughout the course of the year.
So Nadine, you have a question from the audience? Go ahead. Pra? Yeah.
Well, first of all, I think this has been a terrific launch to the process of engagement around what to do for a master plan for this last third of our available space. My name is Barbara Ibrahim, and I was the founding director of a center here at AUC that focuses on civic engagement and philanthropy. And so at the time of our first move, we did some small studies. They were not huge surveys, but they were very interesting sources of data. And I would urge all of you, since you've asked for data that will be useful, to go back and look at past information at this institution, not just currently created.
That's a terrific
Just to give an example of that, there was a tiny study of the move. New campus, old campus, what people missed, what were their anxieties, what did they like about the process and the move. And one of the key things that came out of it was the lack of flexibility that was felt in the way the buildings were constructed on the new campus. Obviously, one of them is that there's not a single movable wall in any of them. And certain buildings have incredible wasted space that we weren't able to utilize when 2 years after the 10-year extra space that had been built into that original plan had used up all of the excess capacity that we'd planned for. So I would just really put flexibility on one of your keywords as we go forward. It would be so easy to give each school a new building. And I love the architecture people, so I'm not saying this against anyone in particular. But what about an incentivizing space where departments that are doing projects jointly with entities in our neighborhood or our community or with other universities in Egypt would be given space to do those programs or projects? And I think there are really interesting ways we can think about flexibility. We had an idea in 2008 to take the unused space and make short-term leases to people that wanted to set up a cafe or a restaurant or a shaded place for drivers to sit. Because in 2008, there wasn't one restaurant, wasn't one cafe in this vicinity. And it never went very far because the lawyers got involved and they said this would open us to all kinds of difficulties if we leased unused space. But look at what's happened in the interim 10 years. Incubators, startups, small business support has become the flavor of the month, and AUC is trying to do it back up and do that kind of thing. So I'm urging flexibility on all of us. Thank you.
Well,
go ahead.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your experience with us. At the beginning of this discussion, we did mention that we wanted to learn from all of you. So the more information you share with us, the more we'll make this process successful. So thank you very much for your input.
I'd like to take that piece of advice, and then I want to direct it to the students in the room. And I thank you for joining us and listening. But I'd like to ask you to tell your friends about the importance of engaging in the master plan, and maybe just fast forward in your mind 10 or 20 or 100 years from now, if you had that experience of saying, wow, I put a green dot on that plaza because I thought it was really important, and now it's built. And you guys, this is a 100-year centennial, and there's an opportunity here to create a legacy for your school and to be a voice within that legacy. And I think that is a huge, honor and opportunity that doesn't come around very often. So please tell your community what a gift I think this is going to be for your campus to be able to shape your future. And I hope the next time we have this type of meeting, we have 1,422 people in the room, and we have a lot of words on the screen and a lot of ideas coming up.
Can I just comment on Barbara's point, and we'd be really interested to receive those early Gearhart reports. We worked, myself and VP Shireen Shaker and her team, we worked to put together what we're calling a legacy repository. So it's a repository of information related to campus, starting from when we first decided to move the competition brief, the various reports, things, just information to share our shared history with the team. We went through it very briefly, but we're sharing it with the team, and we're happy to expand that to include information. So if there's anyone I know that we produce so much intellectual contribution here on campus, if you have student work or if you've done projects related to campus or done any studies, and you can share them with us, and we'll include that in the legacy repository for the group to work from. We have a question, speaking of students' voices, from a student, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I'm a student. Thank you for the discussion, firstly. Actually, I'm a graduating student, and I calculated the number of hours I've spent on campus in the past 2 years, and they averaged about 80 hours a week, because I live 60 kilometers away. So this is like a second home to me. Adding on to the comments mentioned earlier, I'd suggest 2 other areas for discussion. The first being utilizing more elevated areas or roofs, because I like spending my time on roofs because the scenery from above is just beautiful. So adding on to the expansion, using elevated areas would be a much greater advantage to AUC. Another thing is actually the lack of art that exists, because as other students know, there was a project that was done on the steps near Quick that was artistic by a student, and that grabbed all of our attention. So actually moving forward, I'd like to see more art, or like the modern form of art, whether it's in the form of comics, and we can think of a way how to make it adaptable or agile in a manner where we can just erase it and start again to add more projects through the campus. So thank you.
Yep, and can you comment on that, please?
Haitham, the chair of the arts. So I would just reply.
Haitham, would you please stand up so people
Sure,
can see
sure.
you?
Haitham Nawal, the chair of the arts. I would just reply to that. The students that exhibit the work, that's one of my students for the bachelor project. But there's many arts happening in campus, but in the other side of the campus. So the theater, the gallery, there's a lot of stuff happening, but most of the students are in the other side of the campus. Nobody goes there to Gate 1, but there's a lot happening there, especially actually in this week. So I would love to see you there.
Where else do we have questions in the room? Okay, go ahead.
My name is Isra Shaheen, and I just had an idea. I just graduated from architecture engineering, and I was thinking, what if for the next 100 years at AUC was a campus where I actually was learning experientially more than having a degree and then looking for a job and then looking where I stand between all competitions, candidates. And then I'm thinking like it could be more about personalized education and more about flexible learning, and more about interests and like jumping from one class to another without having to think about is it worth my GPA? Would I get an A in this class, or am I fitting like the plan I'm supposed to? Am I on my plan? So it's just an idea that what if we had like areas for experiential things and think about our businesses where here at AUC we're taught to be leaders and business owners and stuff. So why are we waiting until we graduate and then think about this? Why early on wouldn't we like experiment this? And it could be in our curriculum as well. Thank you.
The provost can answer this question. If we can get a mic to Dr. Aziza as well, because I think this ties maybe into our learning spaces plans too. I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but...
Let me just start by saying this is not the first time that we hear that comment. We, 2 years ago, started looking at the quality of education at AUC, finding a definition for the quality of education at AUC. One of the comments that came from the students is what you just said. And we started immediately looking into that issue. So we have 2 initiatives that are actually going hand in hand right now to address that same exact issue. One, the School of Business is starting a co-op program where the students will be required to go do some work for credit and come back to campus for a semester. Right, Sharif? For a semester, the co-op, yes. That's one. Will address part of that issue. But in addition to that, The board approved that we establish on campus what we call it Cupid. This is an innovation hub where we invite entities, companies, NGOs, governmental offices to be on our campus, and with one main condition. The main condition is they have to involve our faculty and students in their operation. Our faculty and students they have to have a stake in what they do, and if they don't, we don't want them on campus. Shireen, we're gonna open the Cupid in September 2020. So if you go to Hibeka building at Gate 1, close to Gate 1, you'll find the name there. The work is being done now to use that space where we can use it for exactly what you're asking for.
And to build on to the Provost's comments, when we're thinking about a physical plan for the space, we don't know all the things that will be happening in 50 years, right? So the idea of flexibility that came up earlier is really important, and we build a plan that isn't just one solution, right? It's a solution that can change and adapt and change as pedagogies change. And so it's really important. Thank you for your comment, and we definitely take that to heart in our planning.
It's something that we as faculty are thinking about. I don't see him in the room, but I have a meeting with our Dean of Undergraduate Studies to talk specifically about how we can integrate in our curriculum and have student work on project-based, real-life things, and through that, learn everything that they need to learn in the different subject areas, as opposed to taking the subject areas in isolation. But I just want Dr. Aziza to comment on this idea of experiential learning and how we're integrating into learning spaces.
Okay, yes. I mean, I'm going to just add this, a lot that has already been said, but experiential learning is one of the learning outcomes that is very much into our ideas of what an education should be. And one of the things, there are two aspects of it. One of them is actually to help faculty redesign their courses so that this experiential learning is incorporated in their classes and their designs. Now, the School of Business has done that and is doing that, but across the campus, some faculty they find the support at the Center for Learning and Teaching. And as a matter of fact, this year, the center is the symposium, the theme of the symposium at the center is going to be experiential learning. So the various different types of experiential learning. So the faculty that are already involved in doing that will share with the rest of the community and give them ideas. Now, on the other aspect is these learning spaces, the aspect of how do we encourage that. And this has come up quite a bit with the other consultants that are working on the learning spaces. And I think your idea of what you were just saying is to create areas or pockets where interdisciplinary and conversations and flexible spaces can take place. And that's something that's happening on. So curriculum and spaces are two things that one is working on together.
So I know there are a lot of burning questions in the room, but we have 5 minutes, so we need to wrap. We'll take a question from Rachel very quickly, and maybe from George, and then final comments. Bassam, I'm sorry, you're the chair of the steering committee. You're going to have plenty of opportunity to voice your opinion.
Thanks. Mine's actually a very just quick comment following up on the Provost's response to your question about interacting with companies in the community, that even though the building itself won't be ready until next September, we actually are expecting 2 up to maybe 4 or 5 companies to be on campus before then. So we'll put them in temporary spaces, but those opportunities to work with the broader community on campus for students should be starting very soon. So I just wanted to let students particularly know that.
George, you had something, our Dean of Students.
Yes, as a matter of fact, my question is coming from a number of students who during this wonderful hour and a half have been WhatsApping me and asking me a very basic question, which I thought was clear, but I'm now sure that we need to just go back and clarify it, and that is whether BBB is here primarily to work with land that has not yet been developed, or if BBB is here to change make major changes to the buildings that already exist on campus? This question is not clear to many students.
Who wants to take that? Neil, do you want to?
Sure, yes. Thank you. That's actually a terrific question. I think we're all aware that there's land that's not developed, but I think we also are aware that the existing campus has many strengths, and it also has places that can be improved. And we're hearing that from everyone. And so I think the way we see this assignment is as a holistic kind of assignment about how to create the most harmonious, complete, and unified campus. And as the chairman mentioned, at the beginning, a campus is eternally a work in progress. It is always changing. And in order to be a work in progress, you need space for the future, not just for the future that we can foresee, but for the future that the next generation can foresee. We don't know what those needs are. So it's a very important decision to start using undeveloped land, because first you have to make sure that you may be able to accommodate all of the needs within the existing spaces and make them even better in the process. And so I think we really have no idea what the answer is, but the point is we want to look at the whole thing holistically and also hear everybody's views on this as well.
I think the answer is that we will be part of making that decision. So it will be as good as the sharing that we go through in this process, but the ultimate intent is to make it as seamless and holistic and for it to operate as one entity ultimately, whether it's stitching back into what we already have or complete new builds. Hen, you want to add to that?
Sure. I think this is a very important point because the success and the future of the campus is to make it really a coherent entity and not create a separation between the expanded area and the existing. And there is always, every plan has room for improvements. You have an unbelievable, beautiful start with the existing campus. But our mission here is to make it complete and comprehensive and seamless, as Magda said.
Okay, so are there any final closing points that anyone on the panel would like to share? Richard?
First of all, I think it's been a really useful session. It's been reaffirming in a couple ways for me. Candidly, yes, I heard some things I wasn't expecting, but mostly I heard things I was expecting, and that's a good thing. I mean, in that sense, I think a positive thing that I can already see is that the flaws in our campus will be things that a lot of people agree on. And I think from the board's perspective, one of our challenges has been trying to figure out at what point do we know enough about New Cairo to know what we need to do and what New Cairo will do for us. And it feels very much like we're sort of at that inflection point where things have grown up around us. We have a sense of the things that the surroundings are not going to solve for us. And so all of this feels like we're at an opportune moment.
Okay, so I want to thank everyone and be a teacher for a moment, close with a quote from one of my favorite architects, Tadao Ando. Design is only as beautiful as the love you lavish upon it. So we all have to approach this process with love of our campus and our community and our institution. Bookmark the campus plan website, please, on your browser. Visit it regularly and stay engaged as we move forward. Thank you all very much.